Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of Average Joe Sports, a sports lovers podcast. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the pod today. If you could, please make sure to hit the like button. It helps the channel out a ton and also allows me to continue making more content just like this. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And in this one, I have the Buffalo Bills beating the Pittsburgh Steelers by a final score of 31-27. The Bills don't cover the 6.5 point spread, but both teams do combine to score enough points to hit the over, which was set at 48 points. Josh Allen is going to be coming in hot with TJ Watt getting that huge contract. He hasn't been practicing much, so does he come in and instantly kill it to put enough pressure on Josh Allen? I'm not sure. Josh Allen, of course, we know the weapons that Buffalo has. So I think it'll be a good game, a high-scoring game, obviously hitting the over. But I don't think the Buffalo Bills cover the 6.5 points. Once again, I have the Buffalo Bills defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers by a final score of 31-27. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Houston Texans. And I have the Jacksonville Jaguars winning this game by a final score of 24-17. I like Jacksonville in this one. Trevor Lawrence's first game, we'll see how they do. If Minnesota can't win this game, it might be a long season. Joe Burrow obviously comes back from his ACL. Is he going to be able to trust it? Is he going to be able to move in the pocket the way he needs to? Because the O-line still isn't really taken care of. New target, Jamar Chase. We're going to have to see how all these things work out. But for this game, I do have the Minnesota Vikings defeating the Cincinnati Bengals by a final score of 27-21. Next up, we have the Seattle Seahawks versus the Indianapolis Colts, and I have the Seahawks beating them by a final score of 31-23. The Colts won't cover the spread at +3, and both teams will combine for 54 points, so that'll be the over. It's looking like Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson are both going to be ready for Week 1 tomorrow, so that's good for Indianapolis fans. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, how will they do? DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson, Russ. O-line still a bit of a question mark. Defense is getting older. How will they respond? Especially with Indianapolis's good O-line opening up holes for Jonathan Taylor. They just extended Naheem Hines. We'll just have to see how it goes. But I'm betting on Russell Wilson and not Carson Wentz. Once again, I have the Seattle Seahawks defeating the Indianapolis Colts by a final score of 31-23. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Washington football team, and I have the football team defeating them by a final score of 27-24. Washington covers the -1, and both teams combine for the over of 44.5 points. Washington, we're going to have to see how good your defense is Week 1. You have the opportunity to stop Justin Herbert. He looked really good last year. Of course, he led all rookie quarterbacks ever in QBR, which is a crazy stat. So with Washington having one of the best defensive lines in football and the Chargers' new worked offensive line, how's that going to go? I expect this to be a really interesting match with dudes on both sides of the defense making big plays. Chase Young, Bosa for the Chargers. But once again, I have the Washington football team defeating the Chargers by a final score of 27-24. Next up, I have the New York Jets versus the Carolina Panthers, with the Jets winning by a final score of 20-17. Carolina doesn't cover the -4 spread, and both teams combine for the under. Zach Wilson, first NFL start. Sam Darnold, first start for Carolina. Former team, obviously, the Jets. So we're going to have to see how that goes. He's obviously going to want to do well, perform well, show them that they made a mistake. And Carolina has a lot of good weapons. Moore, obviously, Robbie Anderson, Sam Darnold, if you want to call him a weapon. Christian McCaffrey is possibly one of the best running backs in the league. Not quite possibly, is one of the best in the league. So we'll just see how that does. But something tells me that Zach Wilson is going to start his career off right. And that defense of Salah's is going to give Darnold a hard time. So once again, I have the New York Jets defeating the Carolina Panthers by a final score of 20-17. So we have the Arizona Cardinals versus the Tennessee Titans, and I have the Titans defeating them by a final score of 35-27. Tennessee covers the -3 spread, and both teams combine for the over of 53.5 points. I'm rooting for Derrick Henry. I want him to beat the NFL record for rushing yards, which is about 2130 something, I believe, set by Eric Dickerson. So yeah, I mean, I'm just rooting for him. He's also on my fantasy team, so that helps. I'm big fans of Arizona this year. I like that they've added J.J. Watt, and now he's next to Chandler Jones. Buda Baker, of course, signs a contract. Tennessee, though, they signed Julio Jones, and now with A.J. Brown, how do they look as a tandem? Great game right here, guys. Looking forward to it. Once again, I have Tennessee defeating the Arizona Cardinals by a final score of 35-27. Next up, we have the Denver Broncos versus the New York Football Giants, and I have the Giants defeating the Broncos by a final score of 24-17. The Giants cover at +3, and both teams combine for the under at 41.5 points. How's Denver going to look with Teddy Bridgewater as the main man? They obviously have a really good defense. Let's see how the offense works with Teddy at the helm. Obviously, they have Drew Lock at second string, but the offense has a lot of great pieces. They're getting Cortland Sutton back from injury. They have KJ Hamler, Melvin Gordon, their rookie running back who's looked really good in preseason, Noah Fant. There's a lot of good guys on this offense. So if Denver isn't good this year, they're going to have to do some serious reevaluation. John Elway just hasn't gotten the quarterback right since Peyton Manning. And we see what happens when you don't have a competent quarterback in the NFL. You end up being Denver for the last 6-7 years. And the Giants. We don't know if Saquon is going to be playing yet. He's listed as questionable. So it's up to Daniel Jones. Has a lot of weapons to throw to. Kenny Golladay, Slayton, Ingram, their tight end, is ruled out. So we'll see how that affects them. I know he likes to check down to him sometimes when he's in trouble. And with no Saquon, the screen game might not be up to par. Not that they would probably do anything with it anyway, because their O-line is still trash. Still haven't figured that out. Is this Daniel Jones' last chance to try to prove everybody wrong? I don't know. If he's bad another year, let's see what they do in the offseason. Once again, I have the Giants defeating the Denver Broncos by a final score of 24-17. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Atlanta Falcons, and I have the Falcons defeating the Eagles by a final score of 28-17. Atlanta will cover the 3.5 points, but both teams combine for the under of 48.5 points. How's Atlanta going to look without Julio Jones? Of course, now they have Kyle Pitts as their main target, / Calvin Ridley. Mike Davis at running back. Matt Ryan, how much longer does he have? Can he prove that he's still an MVP type caliber quarterback? All these things remain to be seen. But I feel like their defense is on the up and up. It's not going to be as bad as it was last year. And I'm not high on Philly at all. I still need to see more out of Jalen Hurts before I can make a full opinion on him. Their defense is old, slow. Their O-line doesn't impress me other than Kelsey. I know that they just gave a monster contract to, oh my gosh, let me try to find it real quick. They gave a monster contract to one of their offensive linemen this morning. This is one I'm not too interested in other than the first game for Kyle Pitts. Definitely one I'll have to be checking out on Red Zone though. Once again, I have the Atlanta Falcons defeating the Philadelphia Eagles by a final score of 28-17. Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers versus the Detroit Lions. And I have the 49ers defeating the Lions by a final score of 31-20. The Lions don't cover the 8.5, but both teams do combine for the over of 46 points. San Francisco, Jimmy G, probably the starter. Trey Lance obviously might be getting some packages, especially when it comes down to the goal line. I know he was a little nicked up for a little bit, ankle I believe. But we'll see how that works. I do expect Jimmy to be the starter for at least most of the season, if not all of it. Shanahan, of course, is going to have some expert plays written up. And for a young, new coach team, I just think Shanahan's going to have his way with the Lions. How's Campbell going to coach them? How are they going to look? Are they going to be better on defense? Is Jared Goff going to give anything to the offense? I mean, Penei Sewell, how is he going to look? TJ Hawkinson, he's pretty much the biggest target, and he's not the best tight end. He's probably top 10, but he can't do it all by himself, you know. Goff, it's going to come down to you on how this team really looks. Once again, I have the San Francisco 49ers defeating the Detroit Lions by a final score of 31-20. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers versus the New Orleans Saints. And I have the Packers defeating the Saints with a final score of 37-27. New Orleans doesn't cover the 3.5 point spread, and both teams combine for the over of 49.5 points. Now, this game isn't at home for New Orleans, obviously, even though it's counted as a home game. They're going to be playing in Jacksonville, so we'll see how that affects them. Obviously, they have a great home field advantage, but with the hurricane, it's just not really possible to do right now. Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers comes back, looks rejuvenated, ready to win, and I expect them to do so pretty handedly. Jameis Winston is the quarterback for New Orleans now. Just think Green Bay is a little bit too tall of a task to take on for Jameis in his first game as the Saints starter. So I have the Green Bay Packers defeating the New Orleans Saints by a final score of 37-27. And last up, the Monday night game. I have the Los Angeles Rams defeating the Chicago Bears by a final score of 24-13. A defensive match in this one. The Rams covered the 7.5 point spread, but both teams do combine for the under of 46.5 points. I'm a big believer in the Rams this year, and their defense is pretty much solidified. Now the only question mark is how Matthew Stafford is going to do with the offense. If you ask guys like Peter King, apparently he's going to throw for 6,000 yards. Obviously, that's just lunacy. I do have them going pretty far, though. And when it comes to Chicago, they're starting Andy Dalton. Obviously, that's not the choice I would make, but that's what they're going for. The defense, they're getting older, but they're still good. I think they will contain Los Angeles to a fair amount of points that if Justin Fields is playing, maybe he does score more than 24. I'm not sure, but you need to see. And I know for a fact Andy Dalton's not going to be able to get it done with this team. So, once again, I have the Los Angeles Rams defeating the Chicago Bears by a final score of 24-13. Alright guys, that was my Week 1 NFL score predictions, as well as my winners and losers, who doesn't cover the spread, who will cover the spread, and the over-under for each game. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Average Joe Sports Podcast. If you could, please make sure to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel out a ton and also allows me to continue making more content just like this. Thank you guys, and I'll be back with another episode.